Thank you. Councilor Gentile had a conflict tonight. Oh, even more, great. So I will be running the meeting, and I see we now have a quorum. This is regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance Committee, Monday, March 10, 2025. And from Ward 1, we have Councilor Greenberg. From Ward 2, Councilor Mickley. Ward 3, myself, Julia Maliki. Ward 5, Councilor Bixby. Ward 6, Councilor Humphrey. Ward 6, Councilor Bixby. And Councilor Grossman from Ward 7, and Councilor Lipoff from Ward 8. And numerous guests. And this meeting is being recorded. So let's start off with our first item, number 53-25, appointment of Patrick Song to the Financial Audit Advisory Committee. And welcome, Patrick. And would you like to tell us why you're interested? And a little bit about your background, which is quite extensive, I noticed.
Hello, everybody. It was an honor to be asked by Mark to serve. I'm a Newton patriot. I love this town. It's been so good to me and my family. So there's a way for me to give back to the community. I would jump on it. I've been professionally a CFO for more than a decade, and have managed several audits at a couple of companies. Pretty familiar with the city budget, actually, from the last go around with the budget cuts with the schools. Took a pretty close look as a citizen. So Newton is just a great place. I grew up in a town where it was not so easy to look like the way I look, and I have a tremendous amount of gratitude, the diversity and open-mindedness of people in this community. As my kids have peace of mind, my kids can go to school unharassed, and they made so many great friends here. It's an honor.
And does anyone have any questions? This might be a really easy.
Yes.
Okay, Councilor Mickley.
More comment than question. Thank you, Chair Maliki, for the time. Patrick is a neighbor and a Ward 2 resident, and someone that I've had the opportunity to know over the past few years as I've gotten involved in local politics. And I've always been impressed by Patrick's diligence on the issues, especially on the financial side. He really digs into the numbers and looks to assess opportunities to do things better. He's also very open-minded in terms of working with people of all different viewpoints and building unique coalitions to get things done in a way that's better for Newton. So I am very excited to see Patrick here nominated for this role. And when the time is appropriate, I would love to move for approval.
Okay, and are there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, we have the motion on the table. All those in favor, say aye, or
Aye.
raise your yellow hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that's 7-0. And this is great. Patrick, you'll be in time for our next meeting of the committee, which I believe is April 9th. But you'll get a notice on that.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Next, we have docket number 49-25, authorization to enter into a 5-year contract related to the city's deferred compensation plan. And this is before us because it's a longer than the sort of default length of 3 years. And who will be presenting for us?
I will be.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. My name is Ron Mendez. I'm the city treasurer, for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet yet. Just a little bit of background information. The city's deferred compensation plan is a plan that has been in place for many years, since the early 1990s. You can probably think of it as akin to a public sector version of a 401k plan. It's allowed under section 457, clause B of the Internal Revenue Code, where employees are allowed to contribute on a pre-tax basis, or if they choose a Roth option, on a Roth basis, into an investment plan. And it's essentially intended to supplement their retirement pension that they would otherwise receive from Newton Retirement System. So this is complete and separate from the Newton Retirement System. These plans are 100% employee contributions. There is no taxpayer funds included in this plan at all whatsoever. And the plan is not even paid for by the taxpayers. It's paid for only through charging fees to participants. So, so there's no cost to the city for this plan, but the law does make the city, as the employer, the plan fiduciary. And specifically, Mass General Laws names the city treasurer, which is myself, as the person who is essentially the fiduciary of the plan. So to that end, it's our requirement as the fiduciary to make sure we're getting the best fee structure, the best investment options for the employees. So we have convened a group of representatives of employees and retirees. They're all going to be evaluating proposals. We are in the middle of a proposal process. And the purpose of this contract is to contract out for a new plan administrator and investment manager for the fund. So we have a RFP process out. We're expecting proposals by the middle towards the end of March. We expect to have a new contract in place in June. And just by the nature of this type of a contract, where these are intended to be long-term investments, changing plan administrators and having to switch investment options every 3 years doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why we're asking the council to approve this contract for longer than the typical 3-year term. So specifically, we're asking for a 5-year term with an additional 5-year term. And the contract also does provide provisions that if we're unhappy with whoever the plan administrator is, for some reason down the road, we decide this isn't working, we do have escape clauses in the contract. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at any time.
And do we have any questions? If not, I'm just curious, since this is, I think, the first time I've had this come up, is have we been doing 5 years in the past on this? And when did the program get established?
The program was established in the 1990s, right after the Tax Reform Act of 1986. So this is a long time ago. But it was originally established in the 1990s. We are overdue for putting this out to bid. It really should have been put out to bid a few years ago. So we're kind of getting caught up on that process right now. So that might be why a lot of people haven't seen it, because I don't think it's really come up in a long time. It would be scheduled to come up probably once a decade.
And is this so it sounds like the employees themselves are heavily involved in picking the administrator. Does the administrator's fees come out of the assets of the fund?
Yes, they are. The plan administrator and investment management fees all are paid for through fees that are charged to participants. And one of the goals, obviously, in this process, this RFP process, is to negotiate the lowest fees we can for the employees, so that we're making sure that as plan fiduciary, we're making sure we're getting the best deal for the employees, and that we're reviewing this fee structure on a regular basis. There is also the option at the end of the process of merging the city's deferred compensation plan into the Commonwealth's SMART plan. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a similar plan for state employees that they allow municipalities to participate in. But if we were to participate in the SMART plan, they would require us to completely shut down our plan and merge everything into their plan. And that may be a good deal. That may be, at the end of the day, the best deal. And that is something we're looking at. But the first step in the process is to see what deal we can get on our own, because we do have a fairly substantial plan. I mean, this plan is, does have over $115 million in assets in it. So it's a fairly substantial plan. So we think we can get a good deal on our own. But then once we get that, once we know what those parameters are, we'll then of course compare that to the SMART plan. We'll get feedback from the employee representatives to see whether or not we want to keep our plan separate or whether we want to merge into the state's plan. So there are different options, but this definitely is just a step that we've needed to do for quite some time.
Mhm. And what percentage of employees participate?
The number of employees is, let's see, I just had that. We have about, so we have 300 plus another 100, so 480, almost 500, yeah, almost 500 full-time employees that contribute. So that's about 40% of the workforce roughly. And just to keep in mind, school department employees also have the option, in addition to contributing to this plan, they can contribute to Section 403 Clause B plans as well, and many of them do. So many teachers and other school employees have their own self-managed plans that they can contribute to, as well as this plan. That's a completely separate
Right.
plan though. And then in addition to that, we do require part-time and seasonal employees to contribute into a deferred compensation plan at a rate of 7.5%. So they have to contribute 7.5% of their pay into their own deferred compensation plan, which is part of this deferred compensation plan. And that's a requirement in order to maintain the exemption from having to pay Social Security taxes. And as you may recall, none of the employees in the city pay Social Security taxes. And the way we can maintain that exemption for part-time seasonal workers is to have this plan in place and require them to contribute 7.5% of their gross pay.
Okay, so this is something that even teachers can participate in.
Correct.
Even though they're in a set.
If they want to, yeah, it's entirely up to them.
Okay, all right, that's more than I knew before. Does anyone else have any questions after that, or can we have a motion? Or let's see, Maria.
Thank you. Is that plan that you just spoke about, Mr. Mendez, the Voya plan for part-time workers?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the part-time plan is currently, the current plan administrator is Voya.
Okay, is it going to stay Voya?
Well, that's what this RFP process will determine. So once we go through the entire process, we'll then determine at the end of the process who has the best fee structure and investment offerings, and whoever that is would presumably, whoever the group of evaluators, which consists of the employee representatives, whoever that group of evaluators determines is the most beneficial from the perspective of the employees, of the participants, that would be the one that we choose. So it could switch from Voya to another plan administrator, or potentially even to the state's SMART plan, if that is what we decide to do at the end of the day.
I see. And when would that switch happen if you do switch?
Well, we're anticipating the contract to be this entire contract to be effective July 1st. And then there'll be probably a 3 to 6 month time frame where we'll put together a plan, and there's going to be a lot of education that'll go out to employees to let them know what's happening before the switchover takes place. But we do expect the switchover to take place sometime in the middle to late fiscal 26. So somewhere around the end of calendar 25, or maybe even into early 2026.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, and so how long has it been since this has been bid out? Did you say, or is it so long ago you don't really know?
It's been a long time ago. I don't know the exact date, but it was sometime in the 1990s. So we're really overdue.
Oh, you mean
Right.
like it was bid out when it was started and not
It was
since?
bid out when it was started. That was a 10-year contract. So we're behind the 8 ball a little bit with this particular one.
Okay, and is it anticipated that if you're happy with whoever you select on the 5-year contract, you might roll that over once and then bid it out at more frequent intervals, like you said, like every 10 years or so?
Yeah, it just gives us some options.
Mhm.
So we have a 5-year contract, and then, like I said, there are escape clauses in the contract itself, so that if it turns out that we select somebody and it just ends up being not a good fit, we can certainly cancel and start a new bidding process over again. But once we get to 5 years, we can then do an evaluation of the plan administrator. And our anticipation is to actually hire a contractor, which would be funded again through the plan. That is a consultant that's gonna assist us with our plan fiduciary responsibilities, so that we can make sure that the fees that are being charged are correct according to the contract. Looking at the investment options to make sure they are, adhering to benchmarks, and if they're not, switching to different investment options. Also, just making sure we're keeping on top of the levels of customer service that we expect the plan administrator to provide participants. And if we're not happy at any point in the way, we do have the escape clause that we can get out. We have the 5-year where we can decide to put it out to bid again or just renew. And as part of this, we will be maintaining a semi-permanent group of representatives of the employees of different classifications of employees, retirees, and the different collective bargaining units, so that we can bring them together to do evaluations of the plan administrator. So our intent is to set this up for the future so that we are a little bit more on top of managing the day-to-day, which is something that we really need a consultant for, and so that we don't, it doesn't take time away from any city employees like myself or anybody in HR. So that we can really keep on top of this plan, and then we have built-in guideposts to make sure we're reviewing the plan on a regular basis, so that we don't let many years pass before somebody thinks about it. I think it just gets forgotten because the city doesn't pay anything for it, so it's not a budget item. It's not something that there are no triggers to say, what about this plan? We gotta think about plan administration. So we want to build those triggers into this contract.
And how are the employees who are sort of overseeing this, how are they selected? They volunteers or elected somehow?
Volunteers. We reached out to all the labor unions, and then we reached out to retirees as well. And we sought volunteers from all of them. We also have some non-union employees volunteering. So we have a group of about a half dozen or so employees that have volunteered, and it's from a wide spectrum. It includes the teachers union, it includes all the unions actually, and like I said, retirees and some non-union folks as well.
And the fund itself, is it insured the way there's insurance for private pension funds? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that's approved 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have 2 items related to workers' compensation claims. Are we okay to discuss these, or is there any need to go into executive session?
I don't think so, unless some of your questions jump into more of the medical piece of it. This is why we always put that note on it. My name
Okay.
is Kelly Brown, workers'
Yes.
comp manager. Sorry.
Okay, so let's first take up number 50-25. Request to transfer and expend $45,000. Would you like to explain that one?
Sure. Both of these just happen to be coincidentally from sewer to the sewer workers' comp fund to the settlement fund. Again, my name is Kelly Brown. I'm the workers' comp and medical leave manager. I see a few faces here. Last time I was in the committee, I think a few members have changed. So good evening. Feel free to ask me any questions as we go through these, but just a brief overview. The first one is a 32-year-old gentleman that has worked for the sewer division of DPW since his date of hire of 3/14/2022. He was out of work due to a work-related injury to his right elbow from June 4th, 2024 to date. We initiated benefits. We paid under the elbow claim. About 2.5, 3 weeks into it, he contacted me and claimed that he hurt his back while doing physical therapy at home for his elbow, essentially doing exercises that he claims that he injured his back and wanted to add that to the claim. That portion of the claim I denied in that there was no supporting medical evidence, and we had no way. He wasn't involved in a formal physical therapy program. Not quite sure how you hurt your back when you're doing elbow exercises. Therefore, they pursued that at the Industrial Accident Board, and he and his lawyers provided medicals to justify a strained back. Again, the origin of injury didn't seem to fall under the guidelines of workers' comp, in that I question whether it arose in the course of and out of his employment in the sewer division as a SHMEO, which is a special heavy motor equipment operator. Big mouthful of that. Essentially, the folks that run the bigger plows and dump trucks and things. Anyhow, it went to the Industrial Accident Board. We got to a conference level. The judge told us to go out and talk about it, in that we were potentially facing a claim for ongoing benefits for the elbow, as well as this alleged injury to his back. Under the workers' comp laws, we faced a 5-year exposure under Section 35, which is workers' comp partial. That would equate to his weekly rate of $704.74 a week. 5 years comes out to about $183,000 and change. With that in mind, and the fact that the judges tend to be very employee friendly, we worked out a settlement for $45,000, which represents about a year of workers' comp and fees. The attorney fees come out of that, and we are awaiting your approval in order to be able to pay this out and settle the claim upon moving the money over. This gentleman has since resigned. He had prior injuries, not back injuries, but he did have prior back problems. So I do think it is something that once that all came to light, it's probably a good settlement for the city. Besides the financial exposure, there's also that knowing that he has, it came out when we did records review and things, that he'd been treating with a chiropractor for quite a number of years. So to me, that gives me a red flag that if we did bring this gentleman back, we would see future claims from him and additional expenses and things. So it was a good claim to settle so that we have no ongoing future exposure. We can also resolve this and not own the back injury. So that is that one, and the total settlement again is $45,000.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's 7-0. Okay, and finally, we have 51-25, request to transfer and expend $49,000 for the workers' compensation claim.
Okay, on this one, it's $49,000. Again, the difference in the money is really, workers' comp is based on 52 weeks of gross earnings prior to the date of injury. Take all gross earnings for 52 weeks prior to the injury, and they're entitled to 60% of that under Section 34, which is temporary total. This gentleman's average weekly wage, he must have worked a little more overtime than the other one. and his data hire was 2017. So that's when I'm figuring out exposure, it's based on the average weekly wage and the comp rate, knowing that under Section 34, there's exposure of 3 years. Under Section 35, which is partial, there's exposure of 5 years. Once those two compensation types exhaust, they can also apply for permanent total disability. So just a little background on that and why these things vary a little bit on numbers, even though this gentleman also worked in sewer as a heavy equipment operator. Again, his wages must have been a little bit higher because his weekly comp rate was $716.26. This is gentleman got injured on 7/26/2023. It was a back injury. We initially denied it in that about a week after the claim came in, we came to know that he had a DUI 3 days before the date of injury. So he was without a license at the time of the injury on a Tuesday morning. So he frankly shouldn't have been in the vehicle and driving the vehicle. We also questioned it in that the back injury occurred right in the utilities bay underneath DPW. There's a garage where they can pull in vehicles and there's cameras there. This injury happened right in front of the camera. You could see everything. You saw him picking up the, I believe it was a heavy water sander, and from the back of the vehicle, pick it up from the back of the truck and take it and go put it away. And then he comes back and he's sort of grabbing his back. And again, all right in front of the camera. In that I've been doing this for 25 years plus, it seemed a little too good to be true, sort of raised my red flags and antennas. So we denied the claim initially because of those two things, and went and got independent medical exams. Got in front of a judge about 6 months later. The judge saw the video, said clearly you have a work-related injury, and that here's the video with him lifting something, grabbing his back. Didn't believe our argument that it was staged. We went through the whole litigation process. We did a bunch of surveillance. We looked into his loss of license. And again, this whole thing was denied. In the meantime, all this is all going. He was treating with a back doctor and diagnosed with a herniated disc at L4-5. So again, there was now medicals and a video. So the judge was essentially buying his whole argument that it did happen at work. We did not have any concrete evidence to prove that it didn't happen at work or other place, other than a lot of questions of like, wow, that's quite odd that it happened right in front of a camera. And he had a DWI and lost his license, and therefore knew he was going to lose his job because he needs to have a license, a commercial driver's license, to keep his job. Anyhow, the judge, again, being very employee friendly, ordered workers' compensation open-ended. We've been paying it. This finally came up to an appeal. And again, the judge sent us out into his lawyer and our lawyer to go out and negotiate this, in that she was clearly going to order us to pay partial workers' compensation, and under that there would be a 5-year exposure of about $149,000. When it was clear that we were going to be ordered, we went out and negotiated with his attorney, and the settlement of $49,000 represents about a year of future workers' compensation benefits at the current rate of $714.26. His lawyer gets 30% off the top of it. It's one that, as I said to Maureen, there's certain ones you just have to make business decisions. You know, we did everything that we could to argue it, but it's just something that would rather settle for a year in fees rather than have them on comp for the next 5 years and continuing litigation. So it's a business decision that you sort of have to plug your nose and and move forward with to get the thing resolved. That I really frankly hate doing, but the Industrial Accident Board is very employee friendly, as you can see.
Mhm.
This is a prime example of it. So, any
Okay.
questions on him?
Do we have any questions from the committee? Counselor Grossman.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Counselor Litroff, I think, had his hand raised first.
That's fine.
Okay,
Counselor Grossman, go ahead.
all right, either way.
You know what?
We
We're
can
gonna
just go
say-
back and forth,
Why don't
deferring
we
to.
do it? Why don't we do it together? What a great job
Maybe
Kelly
we have
Brown
the same
has
question.
done. Yeah, Kelly Brown, great job. You did everything you could to protect the city, and this is not wonderful, but understandable. Thanks for your hard work.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Brown, and I certainly echo those sentiments. I suppose my only question is, from the employee's side, is the reason that he is accepting the settlement because otherwise he'd have to wait a while and continue the process to be awarded a larger sum?
Yes, I mean, he could be ordered, and the judge made it quite clear that she was going to order Section 35, which is partial, so he gets a reduced rate, but he'd be exposed to 5 years. Do you want to have a little bit of money, or do you want to be able to settle it, close it, know that I'm not sending surveillance out and chasing him around? We're not looking for employee wage statements to see if he's earning more and applying to reduce his benefits throughout those 5 years. So it's, sort of so that it can be closed, he can move on and, go do something else that's not as heavy in nature of work. So
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so in not this case specifically, but just in general, if somebody if a injured or claimed to be injured employee doesn't want to settle and takes it and it goes all the way and then they get an award, if they take up another job during that time, is the award reduced by the amount they're earning?
Yeah, well, it depends. If they're on total, then they can't be working at all. But if they're on partial workers' comp, then there's an assumed earning capacity of some sort.
Mhm.
Like in this one, it's a back injury. He could probably do something where he's seated. Years ago, when we used to have toll workers, on 128, that was sort of the light duty job. Because you can stand, you're not doing heavy lifting. It doesn't take a lot of training and education, those types of things. So yes, they can make money, but it's a certain amount because there's an assumed earning capacity and they can't go over the pre-injury average weekly wage, whatever that happened to be prior to the injury. So periodically throughout that 5-year exposure, yes, we could periodically we do surveillance, we see them working and say, oh, maybe they're earning a little bit more, they've landed a better job. So then you apply to get them off again. So it's ongoing litigation. It's a pain in the neck for them. It's costly to us.
Yeah.
It's not a sound business decision. And if you don't have them on for that 5 years and have that potential looming over you or that permanent total at the end of 5 years, they could apply and say they're permanently and totally disabled now. And then with age and degenerative conditions, that back injury could actually get worse over time. And you don't want to expose the city to that. If you can, it's in our best interest to get them settled if you can. It depends whether they want a little bit of money over a long period of time or money right up front. I happen to know that this gentleman has a few kids that might be getting closer to college age. So, sometimes people want the money right up front in one lump rather than over a period of time.
And is there, so maybe it's just a coincidence that both of these were in the heavy equipment area, but is it, have we made any efforts to prevent this type of injury happening?
Yes, certain equipment, we're always recommending a two-person lift
Mhm.
rather than, on this one with the back injury. The elbow injury was more of a repetitive type of thing. The sewer folks, they may be using a jackhammer. They may be shoveling. So there is repetitive work. The elbow injuries are harder to prevent, other than like exercises and things. But yes, we do review them. And there's actually a safety committee within DPW that they look at all the injuries. And one of the questions on the injury report is how did it happen, why did it happen, and how can we prevent it from happening again? So we're always looking at ways, can we engineer out a lift? In this, when it's equipment to put in the truck, it's kind of hard to do, but there are other things like the sewer manhole covers. There are different types of lifts and what are the heck are they called? It's like a magnet that they put on it to pick it up, so that they're not manually lifting. Sorry, I couldn't think of the technical term. But yes, we're always looking at ways to prevent injuries, but DPW is always the heavy hitter. They're it's water, sewer, highway, and then the folks that do the yard waste collection tend to be where the most of the injuries come out of.
Okay, that's a good reminder not to put too many soggy wet leaves in my barrels.
50 pounds or less. As a Newton resident, I am very aware of that, and split up my leaves and try to put a cover on them so they don't, grass clippings don't get heavy and wet.
Or get a bunch of smaller barrels.
Yeah,
Okay,
I really wish we could do the mechanical lifts like they have for the garbage and the recycling on the yard waste, because it is for a long time that was Waste Management did it, and I want to say 4 years ago, 5 years ago, they brought it back in-house, and it's become one of my frequent flyers. So that's tough work.
Yeah, okay. I don't envy you your job. Okay, if that's it for questions, do we have a motion? Okay, Councilor Lipoff moves approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Thank you for your
opposed?
time.
Thank you. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Any abstentions? Okay, 7-0, and I think we are done for the evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Good night.